decided is at 12:30. You may have heard 12. I'd also like to announce that if you like to receive current or past DVDs of performances here, you may see Roy and make a deal. Now, two buddies were out for a Saturday stroll. One had a Doberman and the other had a Chihuahua. As they sauntered down the street, the guy with the Doberman said to his friend, "Let's go over to that bar and have something to drink." The guy with the Chihuahua said, "We can't go in there. We've got dogs with us." The one with the Doberman said, "Just follow my lead." I walked over to the bar, and the guy with the Doberman puts on a pair of dark glasses and started to walk in. The bouncer at the door said, "Sorry, Mac, no pets allowed." The man with the Doberman said, "You don't understand. This is my seeing eye dog." The bouncer said, a Doberman?" The man said, "Yes, they're using them now. They're very good." The bouncer said, "Come on in." The buddy with the Chihuahua figured, what the heck? So he put on a pair of dark glasses and started to walk in. He knew his would be more unbelievable. Once again, the bouncer said, "Sorry, pal, no pets allowed." The man with the Chihuahua said, "You don't understand. This is my seeing eye dog." The bouncer said, "A Chihuahua?" The man with the Chihuahua said, "A Chihuahua? They gave me a Chihuahua?" Collected a donation. The meditation will be led by Barbara Hill.
Sorry, I missed your punchline.
You weren't the only one.
Good morning, everyone. This morning I come with a question for us to reflect on. When do we feel most at peace and sensing our unity with all of humanity? For me, this occurs when I'm willing to relax, allowing my mind to be still and my heart to be open and filled with a love from the infinite source that's always available to us. When I'm willing to let go of my ego, when I'm willing to tell my ego to let go of the negative energy created by fear, anger, regrets, disappointments, sorrows, and judgments of myself and others. When I forget about the past and stay focused on the present, free from worries about the future, then I feel in harmony with nature and at peace with myself and the world. So now I invite you to relax, take a few deep breaths, and when you exhale, let go of the past and the future. In the next few moments of silence, allow your heart to be open, that it may be filled with the healing energy of unconditional love. If you're not sure what unconditional love is, the dog you care for lovingly will show you. So let's have a few minutes of stillness, please. all be at peace.
Our topic today is the Canine Connection, and it's presented by Sandy Britton. She asked, what is the special bond we have with dogs? She's going to explore the latest research on where this bond comes from, how it enriches our lives, and how we can use this knowledge to make our relationships with dogs even more enjoyable. When Sandy Britton decided to turn her lifetime love of dogs into a post-retirement vocation, she took a course in becoming a dog trainer and ended up being mentored at the Sacramento, California SPCA's Dog Behavior and Training Program. Then she herself spent several years teaching dog training classes and doing pet behavior counseling. During this time, she also attended seminars and workshops with some of the biggest names in the world of dog training. Let's welcome Sandy Britton.
Buenos dias. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to start out with a little philosophy, kind of extend your meditation. If you can start the day without caffeine or pet pills, if you can be cheerful despite your aches and pains, if you can resist complaining and boring people with your troubles, if you can eat the same food every day and be grateful for it, if you can understand when loved ones are too busy to give you time, if you can overlook when people take things out on you when, through no fault of your own, something goes wrong, if you can take criticism and blame without resentment, if you can face the world without lies and deceit, if you can conquer tension without medical help, if you can sleep without the aid of drugs, if you can do all of these things, then you're probably a dog. Yeah, you probably realize from that I am an avid dog lover, have been all my life, and I'm kind of curious how many kindred spirits I have out in the audience. So I'm going to ask a few questions, if you could raise your hands. How many of you have ever had a dog? Family dog in your lifetime? Okay, that's almost everybody. How many have at least one now? Okay, and that's great because it's difficult to have a dog when you want to be traveling and stuff. That's quite a commitment. How many have 2 or more? 3 or more? 4 or more? Okay, and I'm not surprised by that because this is a place that really encourages you to keep bringing them home. Okay, how many refer to themselves as the dog's mom and dad? You call yourself a mom, you call refer to your kids. Don't be embarrassed. How many let your dog sleep in your bed? Okay. And this last one, you may not actually want to raise your hand if you want to keep your friends, but how many allow their dogs to lick their ice cream cones? I know you're out there, even if you're not using it. Okay, so we can see there's a lot of dog lovers in the audience, and it's interesting because owning a dog is a really significant commitment. You know, you're feeding it, you're taking it to bed, you're walking it, you're making arrangements every time you want to travel. So, why do we do it anyway? And how can we get the most out of it? That's what I hope to address. So I want to talk a little bit about my first experience with dog training. I was about 20, I think. I was living on my own, and I had gotten a golden retriever puppy. And this was the era when they told you, don't bring your dog to training until they're about 6 months old. So my dog was 6 months old. I thought I was going to be a conscientious owner and sign up for training. Arrived on the first day, all the dogs in choke chains, like they told us to. And the instructor said, can I have a volunteer from the audience to demonstrate on their dog how to use a choke chain? So this woman offered up this darling little dachshund. And the instructor grabs the leash and just strides out and hits the end of the leash. The dog's standing there and she gives it a big pop. Dog yelps and flies through the air. She immediately strides out again, pop, yelp and fly through the air. She did that 3 times. By which time the dog is like trembling, his eyes are wild. And I'm of course sitting there thinking, this can't be right. Okay? If it was me now, I would have been in that woman's face. At the time, I didn't have the confidence, but I'm thinking, this can't possibly be right. I tried it on my own dog. Okay, he's a golden retriever. I give a big pop, and he's going, did I just feel something? So it didn't really work on him either. You know, no matter how hard I yanked and pulled, and I didn't like doing it to begin with, it didn't really seem to affect his behavior much. So we ended up dropping out of that class. We actually ended up dropping out of several classes. I did a lot of research on my own to try to train him. Over the years, as I got more dogs, I continued to go to training classes, and dog training became more positive over the years. With my current Chihuahuas that are 12 years old, I did the training, me and my husband did the training ourselves because we pretty much knew what we were doing by then. But then when it was time for me to start looking at retirement, I was thinking, well, I'd like to have a part-time job after I retire. What would be a good job? It was during the recession, and I heard, oh, pets are recession. I thought, oh, well, this is great. I'll try dog training because I've always wanted to do this anyway. So I took an online course, and at the end they apprentice you to an organization, and I had the great good luck of being apprenticed to the Sacramento SPCA, where I was mentored by very experienced dog trainers, where I had immediate access to teach dog training classes. So I apprenticed for about a year, and at the end of that they offered me a job, which corresponded with me wanting to retire, so it was always good. And I started working for them. And I taught dog training classes, so formal classes, teaching to sit, stay, that type of thing. And I did behavior counseling, which I really loved. The behavior counseling was sometimes the dogs in the shelter, but more often it was clients that brought their dogs in. The callers that brought their dogs in who had specific problems they wanted to address. And one of the reasons it was so great to work for them was that I didn't have to build up a business. From day one, I was working with dozens of dogs and their owners, dozens of different types of problems. I had a great mentor. I was sent to conferences and seminars. So I was really able to kind of get up to speed fairly quickly. And over time, I think I worked with probably hundreds of dogs and their owners, because we never took a dog off and trained it. We always showed the owner what to do. And I saw the huge variety of personalities, and I saw firsthand how problem behavior can affect dogs and their owners. Behavior like separation anxiety, where people were literally planning their lives around their dog because they couldn't leave it alone. And that is a very difficult job to work with. But because as I became more and more interested in thinking about how can I really help these people, I started wanting to pursue knowledge about dogs and what we know about dogs and how they think and all of that, and found it surprisingly difficult to find. And what I discovered was that animal behaviorists aren't really crazy, or weren't at the time, really crazy about studying dogs. They preferred studying wild animals. They thought they were much more interesting. Domesticated ant, that's boring. At some point, they finally realized that if dogs don't have the same intelligence that wolves do, they have a different kind of intelligence that in some ways is even more interesting, which is the way they relate to human beings. And suddenly there was this big explosion in studies of the dog connection to human beings. And so we can ask the question, do they really have a special bond with humans? And the answer from a lot of studies was yes. For one thing, they have a unique ability to read human signals and body language. I'm not saying that other animals can't do it. Horses are pretty good at it, cats can be good at it, but dogs are the best. They can understand pointing, and most of them understand it without even having to be taught. Chimpanzees, they've worked with them extensively to teach them what pointing means, and they still don't seem to quite get it. And it's because the dog is so tuned to us, they're looking to us to kind of show them the way of the world. And so when we stick the finger out, you can see them following it, which is really an amazing thing when you think about it. Then they started doing blood tests on dogs to check hormone levels. They taught them to sit quietly in MRIs, and they were able to detect that yes, dogs have the same brain patterns of love when they see us as we do when we look at our children, when we look at our parents, when we look at people we love, and they produce the same hormone, oxytocin, in response to looking at their owners. And they would do experiments where they have the MRI and had the owners approach and had other people approach, and the reaction of the dog to the owner was distinctly different. You know, dogs really do. If you're wondering if your dog really loves you, you know, I can't tell you subjectively, I haven't been inside a dog's head, but from everything we can see, they do. They feel something, they have a reaction that's very similar to our reaction of what we call love. Okay, so how did they get this way? How did they develop this connection to us? Strangely enough, the answer to that came from a set of experiments with foxes. In the 60s, in Siberia, they were doing breeding with the Russian silver fox. I guess the population was endangered and they were trying to build up the population. And somebody noticed that some of the fox kids, I guess, were more friendly or less afraid of humans than others. And they thought, well, this is interesting, let's do a little breeding experiment. And so they took the bravest dogs, the dogs that weren't afraid of people, or least afraid of people, and bred them together. Foxes, sorry, not dogs, foxes. And then the next generation, they took the least afraid or the friendliest of those and bred them together. In 10 generations, they started to see a distinct change in the way that foxes viewed humans, their lack of fear, even approaching them. By 40 generations, they had completely changed the look of the fox. Okay, the ears had started to go floppy, they started wagging their tails, they started whining, and there were changes in the shape of the skull and jaws that made them look more puppy-like. 40 generations with foxes, that's about 15 years that they were able to affect that change. And so people who have been studying where dogs came from thought, well, this is really interesting. And this was done in the 60s and it was replicated again recently with the same foxes. They thought, okay, let's imagine we've got a wild wolf. And from DNA studies, we know that the dog is not descended from the wolf that we currently know. They have a common ancestor, but it's not the same wolf. It was a smaller, probably less aggressive wolf that might maybe did a little more scavenging than hunting. And what they started thinking was, this is one of the favorite theories to begin with, but the fox experiment really solidified it. Imagine a human encampment and they're eating and they're throwing the bones and other garbage to the side. And there's wolves in the area and they're smelling this and they're realizing that, hey, if we just hang around here a little bit, we got a free meal. Okay, we can pick off those bones, we can eat the bones that the humans don't eat. But imagine that these wolves that are going to hang around the human encampments have to be the ones that are a little braver, a little less afraid of human beings. And every generation that gets solidified a little bit more and a little bit more. And the people, what are they thinking? Well, these wolves are kind of scary, but they start to notice, but they raise an alarm when enemies are approaching. They raise an alarm when wild animals are approaching. Maybe they even chase off intruders. This is kind of a sweet deal, you know? And then maybe they start noticing, wow, those little wolf cubs are awfully cute. Maybe sometimes a wolf litter, the mother dies and they take over and raise the babies. And so we can kind of imagine over the years, these wolves becoming more and more dog-like, just like the foxes did. In fact, some people say they were, self-domesticated. Now, the really interesting thing for me is that there are some people who have put forth the theory that maybe it was this symbiotic relationship we have with these animals that helped the human race be successful. Because think about it. A person and a dog together are the perfect animal. The dog has, for survival, right? The dog has the sense of smell, the sense of hearing, the speed, the teeth. The person has a sense of sight, the ability to make and use weapons. And so put them together and they become almost unstoppable. That the wolves, or now the proto-dogs, are tracking the game. The humans are killing it. They're all sharing the spoils. The wolves are protecting the encampments and setting up the alarm and chasing off the bigger animals. And, through it all, the humans were able to survive better. And eventually the humans learned, we can get them to pull our sleds, we can get them to protect our flocks. and all sorts of things that dogs were doing for us that were helping us survive as a species. Is this true or not? I have no idea, but I don't think it's far-fetched. And there's some people putting forth this theory. Okay, so we already own something, right? We owe these dogs something, and they still bring us many benefits. So off the top of my head, on my list here, we've still got working dogs in the police, the military, in search and rescue, in contraband detection, who do protection. We still use sled dogs, we still have herding dogs, we still have hunting dogs. So we still have all these dogs working with us in partnership to accomplish things. We also have service and therapy dogs. So there's seeing eye dogs, and there's hearing ear dogs, and now they've got dogs that, for people with PTSD, have you seen the videos of the dog waking people from nightmares and comforting them? We've got the dogs that go around to hospitals and hospices and comfort the ailing and the dying. We've got dogs. Autistic children seem to have a particular relationship to dogs. Not all of them, but some of them seem to be able to make a connection to dogs they can't make to people, and it helps bring them out of their shell. Dogs that detect you're about to have an epileptic fit. Dogs that detect your blood sugar is low. They're teaching dogs to sniff cancer. Cancer, like lung cancer in the breath, and all sorts of fascinating things. So we're still using them in a variety of ways. And then we have our pet and companion dogs, which is probably how most of us relate to our dogs. And they bring great benefits to our life. For those of you who have them or love them, you know what I mean. To have somebody who is always happy to see you when you get home. To have somebody who never says, you really want to eat that cookie? That no matter what you look like, no matter what mood you're in, it's unconditional love. That dog still is loyal to you and loves you. Okay, so because of this, because of what I consider we owe the dog, I want to present my philosophy of how we should be relating to them as pets. Okay? So, and be able to use the newest research in order to kind of have a better understanding of what we should be doing. Okay? So, I believe that teaching your dog good behavior is important. A dog that behaves well, you can take more places, they're more fun to be around, they don't destroy your house. But, for me, the most important thing is to establish a strong connection with your dog. Okay? I do believe that connection is the best foundation for training, because a dog that's attentive to you is much easier to train, who wants to please you. And so I want to talk about, first, an approach that will not help us achieve this connection, but is very popular. A little less popular than it was, but still very popular. Okay? To me, it's the most prevalent and damaging myth about how we relate to dogs, and that's this whole thing of dominance, or the alpha dog. Okay, now, a lot of you have heard about it. A lot of you, I'm sure, are using it, believe in it, and I just want to give you a little idea of why I'm not crazy about it, and why there's a lot of stuff coming out now that's not so crazy about it. First of all, where did this idea come from, that we need to dominate our dogs? Well, it came from wolf pack studies. Somebody put together a bunch of wolves, put them in essentially a fenced area, and said, okay, now we've got a wolf pack, let's start studying them. And they saw that there was all sorts of hierarchical stuff going on. There was more dominant dogs, there were submissive dogs, they were working out a hierarchy. Well, the problem with this is, it's as if we were trying to study normal human behavior in a prison. These wolves did not know each other, they did not want to be confined together, they had to work out survival methods to keep from killing each other, and to be able to have, divide up the food or have their resting places and work all that out. Okay, a real wolf pack, which surprisingly they've only done these studies fairly recently, I think in the last 20, 30 years, where they've actually followed real wolf packs. A real wolf pack is usually mom, dad, and the kids. So it's a mated pair, they have their cubs, they raise their cubs, the older ones hang around to help hunt and stuff for the next generation, and eventually they start going off just like humans and finding their own mates and starting their own packs. So there is definitely a hierarchy, but it is a hierarchy based on the natural authority of the parents, right? The parents feed the babies, the parents protect the babies. The babies naturally look to the parents as to how they should behave. They learn how to hunt from them and everything. It's a natural hierarchy. There is rivalry between the siblings, definitely. Okay, just like there is in human families, right? Which I guess we'll get to about next week. But so there's rivalry between the siblings. But really, there's very little, it's very rare for any of them to challenge the parents as they get older and want to take over the pack. They tend to want to go off and start their own packs. Okay, so the original idea of hierarchy in the wolf pack is a myth. And the other thing is dogs aren't wolves. Dogs have been bred, just like the foxes, to be more juvenile all of their lives. And so we've essentially set them up by breeding to look to us as that parental authority all their lives. They don't outgrow that. Now people who have raised wild wolves, for the first 6 months or so, things are good, and then they outgrow that. They don't stay juvenile. And then they aren't really that interested in what the human wants anymore. Okay? But dogs are set up genetically to respond to us as parental figures all their lives. So how can we take advantage of that? Okay, so when I talk about this in my dog training classes, because we always started out with this, and people would say, so when my dog jumps on me, takes my place on the couch, steals food off the table, lifts a leg on my furniture, or even growls at me when I try to take his bone, isn't that dominance? Aren't they trying to assert dominance over me? Well, if you think about the real meaning of dominance, it's more of a rivalry, almost a reproductive rivalry, right? The strongest get to reproduce. And obviously, your dog is not challenging you for a reproductive rivalry, okay? There may be a bit of a rivalry going on. The dog doesn't want you to have the bone. I can explain all these things in ways that don't really involve dominance, but even when they do, I can tell you that the worst thing you can do is to try to be even more intimidating to accomplish what you want to accomplish. I'm going to give you some alternatives. Okay, so training dogs using the dominance model. It's based on intimidation and punishment, like choke chains, the penny cams. Who remembers the scruff shake and the alpha roll? Okay, so the scruff shake, you take your dog by the scruff and shake them, because supposedly that's what mom used to do. And the alpha roll is you roll them over, because that's supposedly what the dominant wolves in the pack did. The one time I came close to being sincerely bitten by a pet dog of mine was when I did a scruff shake. And I never did it again. I immediately thought, well, that's wrong. And now most of the scruff shake and the alpha roll have mainly been repudiated. Even though there were some Franciscan monks that originally put this idea out there, they've since published books that said, whoa. We were wrong, don't do that anymore, okay? So I saw in behavior counseling dogs that had been through this training regimen that had started biting, and that we had to undo fear and help them trust their owners again before we could deal with that problem. Okay, so I saw very real effects of this problem. Okay, so for sensitive dogs, you will cause fear, leading to aggression, like that poor little dachshund. She wasn't learning anything. She was scared out of her mind. For insensitive dogs, like my golden, you really don't make a lot of progress because they don't pay much attention to you when you try to be intimidating. For dogs that are kind of in the middle, you probably will get success. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but at a cost, and that is damage to the relationship. So for instance, if you are training your dog, there's one of the great dog trainers, Patricia O'Connell, who was moving from the old style to the new style, and she talks about a dog she was training to do obedience trials, and that every time she got out the training equipment, the dog would slink off. And when she switched over to positive training, when she started getting out the training materials, the dumbbells and things, the dog would start jumping up and down. And she had even more success with the positive methods. When I think of my golden retriever, if I had known then what I know now, I would have had so much success with that dog. That dog was so primed for positive training. And the intimidation training just didn't work with him at all.
Does it work anyway?
Yeah. And it's the big thing for me about this type of training is it's hard on the owners. They don't like to do it. I didn't like to do it. I've got, owners when I was doing behavior counseling that said, my dog jumps on me when I come in. And we will go through the standard routine of, okay, well then you have to ignore them. You have to go about your business and let them calm down. And when they've got all the paws on the ground, then you can start giving them attention. And people who do this consistently will find that the dog very quickly figures out, gotta get my paws on the ground and get myself under control before I'm gonna get attention. Okay, it works great. But what did I hear from the owners? Oh, but he's so happy to see me. I can't ignore him. That's so mean. Okay, you think something like this is gonna want to be yanking on a choke chain? So you couldn't even get owner compliance if you wanted to. So for me, the better paradigm is parenthood. The best paradigm would probably be partnership, which is what we used to have with dogs when they were living their lives and we were living ours. We were kind of hanging out together. That's impossible to do in the modern world. We've essentially made dogs dependent on us. We can't, we have to feed them. We don't want them to get run over by cars and that type of thing, or get in dog fights. So the next best paradigm is parenthood, which I would define as you are in charge, but the relationship is important. You never do anything to damage the relationship, okay? And I have to say, most people seem to understand instinctively that parenthood relationship because they call themselves mom and dad. Almost everybody we ever worked with, when they were talking to each other, go to mom, Well, when dad tells him this, he does that, and so they refer to themselves as mom and dad, and they refer to the dogs as the furry kids. Okay, so training dogs using the parenthood model, what does that look like? Well, it's positive, but that does not equal permissive. We still expect good behavior. Okay, what the emphasis is on rewarding the good behavior rather than punishing the bad behavior. You might do things to discourage or interrupt the bad behavior, but in the main, you're trying to reward the good behavior. I found that most people are far more willing to use the positive techniques. So when we did dog training classes, we had very few dropouts. We had very enthusiastic people who came back every week, and they were actually building a relationship with their dog by doing training, rather than damaging the relationship. Okay, as the dog became more and more understanding of what they were supposed to do, everybody got more excited, and everything flowed along more smoothly. I will admit that positive training can have negative side effects if it's not done properly. The biggest one being treat dependence, that you gotta show the cookie, you gotta bribe before the dog will do something. There are ways to prevent that. A lot of people don't use those ways, and so they create the treat dependence. But I don't consider that to be a really serious problem. Not like a fear biter who's been over-dominated. And then the big question we would get in my training classes is, but aren't I allowing my dog to manipulate me? Okay, so I would say no, what you're doing is giving your dog ways to obtain the things he wants and needs, but in ways that you find appropriate. Okay, so I got the question, is a problem dog always the fault of humans? No. Dogs do have their own quirks, they have their own personalities, they have physical and psychiatric issues. We saw dogs with separation anxiety, which is really a panic disorder, with obsessive compulsive disorder. We saw resource guarders, we saw neurotic dogs, we saw dogs with prey drive, all those things you have to deal with. You kind of have to have a strategy for dealing with those. Okay, so Margaret is telling me I've got 10 minutes. I want to run through my list of do's and don'ts for improving your relationship with your dog. Okay, the number one is do socialize your puppy. If you're lucky enough to get a dog before it's 12 weeks old, make sure it meets lots and lots of people and other dogs. Vets scare us. They tell us your dog's going to get parvo if you let him out. Well, then carry him around. Have a party. Invite people to your house. What we saw was that bad behavior is far more deadly than parvo. A lot more dogs got surrendered and had to be euthanized for bad behavior than got parvo. Okay? Do create a parental relationship with your dog, and that's an easy thing to do. All good things come from you. You want your dog to know that. So in our training classes, we discourage free feeding because you want your dog to know you provide the food. That creates the parental role. If you want a free feed, then make sure treats come from you. One of the best advice I ever heard was, if you get a new dog, for the first 2 weeks, everything it eats comes from your hand. Everything. It does not come from a bowl, it comes from your hand. Oh, another thing is if it's people food, which I don't have a problem with, so long as it's not bad for them, is you stick it in your mouth first and then give it to them. Because the dog, the dog's fed out of their mouths, and that establishes that relationship. Okay, so a good parental relationship can solve problems like resource guarding and timidity. Question I always get is, should I allow my dog on the furniture? If you want to. Should I allow my dog in my bed? It's up to you. If you can't sleep with a dog in your bed, then train your dog dog in your bed, the only thing I would advise is don't let the dog take over the bed. You don't have to go, you know, like that, when you come back and it doesn't want you to get back in, or, okay, that's it, lost your bed privilege. Okay? And if, you know, a big part of advice for the French relationship is enjoy them and let them enjoy their lives in time with you. With kids, we say they grow up so fast. With dogs, I would say they grow old so fast.
Yeah.
You have such a short time with them, make sure it's good for both of you. Okay, don't assume the dog sees the world like you do. They are not people. They respond well to us, we get fooled. They're not people. They aren't verbal. They respond better to our body language and our hand signals than to our words. They don't interact in the same way. One of the big things I see is, let's say you have a timid dog, and you probably all experienced this if you have a timid dog. Somebody wants to pet your dog. No, he's really shy. Oh, it's okay, I'm a dog person. And this person swoops in on your dog, reaches a hand over the head. Okay, everything we do as humans to greet another human is the opposite of what dogs do. We move right in, we make eye contact, we hold out our hand. Dogs, if you'll notice, they come from the side. They kind of look away until they've got to know each other a little better. They do the sniff thing. You know, and so what we do scares the heck out of them. And then they nip, and then the person goes, ooh, you have a nasty dog. You know, and it was the person giving all the wrong signals to the poor dog. Okay, they don't see things the same way we do. I've had people, you know, why can't I house train my dog? Get inside the dog's head. I find it very difficult here because the surface in the house feels just like the surface out on the patio. You know, now if you have grass, it's a little different, but I have an adopted older dog that spent all her life probably on a rooftop, and for her, if there's hard surface under her feet, it's time to pee. And so house training her is very difficult. You know, we know what's in the house and out of the house. How do they know? You know, you got to get inside their head and understand. If they get into the garbage, don't leave the garbage where they can get into it. You can't expect them to have that self-control all day long. It's like you sitting in front of a chocolate cake or whatever's your favorite thing for 8 hours and not be able to touch it. Another thing I encountered, just to give you an example of the way we see things wrong, was somebody called on our behavior health line. His dog had submission urination. And he was upset because he thought the dog was deliberately peeing to get him. You know, it's doing the dominance thing. And so he would get mad at the dog and she would pee some more. You know, and the poor little thing is trying to say, I get it, you're the boss. And when I explained to him all that, he felt so bad. You know, but then undoing that is really difficult. So sometimes what seems obvious, what they're doing is not obvious at all. They are not people. Okay, and in others, their view of cause and effect is very limited. So if something happens and something else happens, they have to happen very close in time for them to associate them. Classic mistaken dog training class. Person says sit, dog sits. Person gets out their treat, goes to hand the dog stands up. Person puts the treat in their mouth. What does the dog just learn? Yeah, stand up and I get a treat. And breaking people that habit of even know the butt has to be on the ground or the food does not go in the mouth. And most dogs, if you do this, bang, the butt goes right back down. You know, so you can very quickly get them to understand, here's what I'm treating you for. But people had this bad timing and created all sorts of misinterpretations. I would say do learn how to interpret dog body language. A lot of times it's not what you think it is. There's a lot of great resources online for that. Do teach them self-control. Make them wait a little bit for things. I let my dogs sit by the table while I'm eating. If they start whining and whimpering, they get chased away. If they sit there quietly, they get a little tidbit every once in a while. The idea is that when I bring them to a restaurant or something, they'll know how to sit there and wait. Now, my neighbors are ruining it for me because every time they come over, oh, his eyes are so sad. And they want to give my dog treats, but do watch for physical and psychological issues. Dogs do get, maybe they're in pain. If you're seeing a behavior change, they get senility. They can have problems like thyroid and stuff that can change their behavior. Food allergies can change their behavior, so try to be aware of that. And I would say here's the number one. Don't reward the wrong things, do reward the right things. It's very simple for me to say, it's very hard to do. Okay, so it's just like the dog jumping up on you when you come home. The automatic response is, oh, hello. And then another day when you come home, the dog has muddy paws or you've got some new clothes on and you don't want him to jump on you, suddenly it's, ah. You know, and maybe all that pushing away, your dog interprets as, oh, this is fun. You know, so they're thinking, oh, I guess I'm doing the right thing. You've got to be very clear about what you're rewarding and what you're not rewarding. And that timing is very difficult. The other thing is that we tend to ignore them when they're behaving well. We've got the rowdy puppy who's just been driving us nuts. Finally, he falls asleep exhausted in his bed. And we're tiptoeing around because we don't want to wake him. But this is the time when he should be getting a reward. Maybe not while he's asleep, but if he's just laying there quietly, that's when you should be going by giving him the pets, giving him the treat, letting him know, I like this. You know, instead we tend to give lots of attention, which may be, stop that, stop that, stop that, or he grabs something we don't want. Give me that, give me that. Well, what does he think this is the best thing ever? Okay? Don't give him instructions you know you won't follow through on, so you're comfortable in your chair and your dog's doing something. Stop that, stop that, stop that. The dog, how long does it take him to figure out? You're never going to get up. You know, you can walk him away. You don't have to hit him. You don't have to yell at him, but you can't let him do the things you don't want him to do. And I kind of covered this. Don't give them rewards that aren't rewarding, and corrections that are rewarding. So the correction of trying to yank something out of their mouth or pushing them away may be rewarding. Giving them a big thumpy pat, maybe not at all rewarding. A big pat on the head, a lot of dogs really don't like that. The scratch behind the ear, yes. Big pat on the head, no. So you're giving them the wrong message. Okay, so to wrap up, I'm going to leave you the words of Conrad Lawrence, who was a famous animal behaviorist of the 20th century. The fidelity of a dog is a precious gift, demanding no less binding moral responsibilities than the friendship of a human being. Okay?
Raise your hand, someone will bring you the mic. You could stand, I think it's a good idea.
Sandy, before I get started, I want to say that the maids found a baby possum over here in the bodega. I thought what a synchronistic opportunity for animal lovers to answer the question, do we let nature take its course and let the cats eat the possum, or does someone here want to take them to take care of it? If you want to take care of it, let me know. Otherwise, I would say let nature take its course, but open circle, you decide, okay? Thank you. Questions?
All right, thank you very much. It sounds to me that much of the dog training is actually owner training.
Oh, yes.
And you talked about the Canine Connection, that's your subject. I have a cat who has adopted me. So the feline connection is a very interesting one as well. This morning I moved my cat from my office chair because I wanted to see something on television. And she put her claws right into my hand. And there it is. So bad cat. Now he's hiding under the bed when I come home. He'll probably come out and rub against my legs. So it's totally different situation.
What are your thoughts about clicker training?
I think clicker training is.
The mic is not on.
So she asked, what are my thoughts about clicker training? So I don't know if you know what
I've got another one here.
Test.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
We'll turn this one on. If it's on over there, can she?
Hello? Okay. So I like clicker training, and for those of you who don't know what it is, it's where you use a clicker to mark when the dog has done what you want, and then you can follow that with a reward. The clicker gives you the ability to time perfectly when the dog has done what you want. The problem that I've had with it is that once the dog learns something on the clicker, it's very hard to get them to offer anything else. The minute they see the clicker, they want to do that over and over. There are ways around that. So yeah, it's definitely one of the positive methods, and it's great for training complex tricks.
Hi, you sort of touched on this. Can you hear me? The empathy bit.
The what?
Sort of almost a telepathy between humans and dogs. I've had dogs all my life, multiple dogs, single dogs, but there was one dog that from day one almost read my mind. I was very sick at the time, couldn't take her out, couldn't train her, but that dog read my mind.
I would say dogs, I don't know about the mind reading, that hasn't been studied, but I would say dogs are much more sensitive to body language than we realize. So all of you know, the minute you do anything that might indicate you're going to go out, the dog gets excited. The minute you do anything that might indicate you're going away on a trip, the dog gets depressed. I had a dog, it was my golden, that I didn't allow him near the table when I was eating. He had to lay down over there, and when I was completely done, he would get some scraps. And I could get up and take dishes into the sink, I could do all sorts of things. He knew when I was completely done. I don't know how he knew. He saw some signal that said, out of all the things you just did, I know that's the thing that means you're done and I'm about to get my treat. So I don't know how they do it. But they're watching us. They have nothing to do with their lives but watch us every second to decide how what we're doing is going to affect them.
Have you ever heard of military school for dogs?
No.
We adopted a dog from Humane Society, and he had been abused by a man. I brought the dog home. He was scared of my husband. He wouldn't go anywhere near him. I had to go out one night, came home. My husband tried to get the dog to get him to go outside and pee. He chased him all over the house. The dog eventually peed in the kitchen. It wasn't working out. So we went to a trainer. He said, "I'm putting the dog in military school." What he did was, the dog loved me, I loved the dog. So I had to ignore the dog, put him in a kennel. He lived in the kennel anyways, he loved his kennel. But I had to ignore him all day. My husband came home from work, he would put his belt around the dog's leash, and he'd control the dog the rest of the day. And he would turn the dog over on his back, grab his muzzle, grab his leg, and say, "It's mine." He would feed the dog. I had to completely ignore it all the time.
So okay, I'm good with the feed the dog part. I'm not good with the turnover on the back. We determined that scares the dog even more. I'm surprised it worked. But yes, what we tend to give as advice when we have this situation is, for a while, all good things have to come from the person they're afraid of. All good things, all walks. Once they have the dog out on a walk, that person becomes the point of protection. So, a lot of what you're saying definitely rings true.
Yeah, I just had to ignore him completely. He cried in the kennel, and I just about cried too. I wanted the dog, but when my husband came home, he had complete control. He ended up loving my husband. He respected him. He would listen to my husband. My husband said, "Come." I was his play toy.
Yes, they figure us out really fast. Yeah, sure can.
Good morning. I'm John. I'm from Calgary. Some years ago, Calgary needed a new children's hospital, and we had some progressive leaders in our city, and they decided they needed to consult with the children before building the hospital and ask, what do you, the children, want? Very high on the list, the children said, we want our pets. And when the new hospital, the children's hospital, was built in Calgary, it was built with a pet entrance, separate from the other entrance, a separate pet entrance, and a separate area in the hospital where the children could interact with their pets.
That's fabulous. I heard that after Katrina, they had to revise their policy on allowing refugees to take pets with them after a natural disaster, because people chose to stay in their home and stay with their pet. And now they have facilities to allow you to bring your pet.
This has been very interesting. I've done a lot of reading and television watching about the dogs, the boxers, the wolves. And I visited the Wolf Center in Minnesota several times. There's one thing I have not been able to find down here, and that is somebody who is telepathic with animals. I had a friend in Minnesota who was, and I know of people like Penelope Smith who are world famous for her work with animals. With a population this size, there's got to be someone here who is telepathic with animals, and I am not.
I can't help you with that one.
I've got somebody here.
I learned pretty well how to read body like that.
I guess I'll have to put a personal ad in the,
Okay, we're just able to have one more question, and I guess it's going to be this one.
Thank you.
Can't hear.
I finally got, I accidentally got a puppy. And, didn't know anything about dogs except to be bit. And so, therefore I never had dogs before. So this was a puppy. I read the entire book, Kiss. I even masticated the food. I did everything according to the book. And she was a perfect, loving baby dog. She was perfect. Then we had to go on a 10-day trip. I left her with a veterinarian and his wife, who was a dentist to dogs, for those 10 days. It was over Christmas. When I came back, it was a different dog. She was emaciated. She was living in a dirty, filthy box with petrified poo. The kids had tortured it for the entire 10 days, and it has done nothing but bite and growl and be vicious with me for the last 2.5 years. And Dr. Ladrone has her on Prozac now. And
That's actually not unusual as a first step in modifying behavior.
but I wanted the dog because I wanted love, affection, attention. I wanted someone that would accept me. And now, if I put my hand out to touch her, she'll growl. I'm not even allowed to touch her unless she, for some reason, wants to be next to me. But I don't know what to do with her. If I give her up, they'll probably put her to sleep.
I can't really address that just off the top of my head, obviously, without seeing the dog. And I don't know if the situation is beyond help, but I think it's a great warning for people to be very careful about who you leave your dog in the care of.
Thank you. That was great. I'd like to ask you to leave your seats in place, but please dispose properly of your styrofoam cups and all of that. Remember,